Step into the time machine. Let's travel through the past. Mr. Gold's gonna take you on a history blast. From ancient civilizations to the world wars. Get ready, hold tight.
Hey guys, in this video I want to discuss the ancient Chinese inventions and how they sort of laid the framework for the modern world that we have today. So the way I have this formatted is a top 10 list, and there's really no ranking for these, but these are just the order that I think they were important. So the very first major invention was paper. It was invented in 105 AD by Kai Lun, and this was a significant improvement over the Egyptian papyrus and other crude forms of wood bark and leaves and things that people were writing on prior to this. Like tablets, for example, they weren't as flexible as paper. If you were a messenger, think of how much pain you would go through carrying tablets from stone around versus what Kai Lun invented. It was paper made out of like hemp and bark, and it was flexible, so it could be rolled up into scrolls. So paper, very important, spreads information around way more effectively than tablets or papyrus. Number two, that kind of goes along with paper, printing. The earliest form of printing technology was woodblock printing, and this was developed by the Tang Dynasty. It was basically they would carve out these wooden blocks in reverse. So when you put the paper on the wood blocks in reverse and flip over the paper, it'll look normal. And they were invented by Bi Sheng around 1040 AD. And then later on, you're going to learn about the Gutenberg press when we get into our European history times. So this preceded the Gutenberg press by about 400 years. So this is really important. It's way easier to just chisel out these wooden blocks, put the paper on them, press it down, than to have to write it over and over and over again. Your hand would get so tired having to do that. So big invention there, printing press, woodblock printing. Number three, gunpowder. It was discovered by Chinese alchemists in the 9th century while searching for an elixir of immortality. So they were just like blending these molecules, these powders together, and then they found out that it was very flammable. Initially it was used by fireworks. You can see the ancient Chinese firecrackers on the right there, and then later on it developed into cannon fuel and bullet fuel. So depending on how you feel about guns, this was either a really good invention or a really bad invention. But if you're a country, you don't want to get caught without guns. We've seen in history how that usually goes. If you want more proof, read Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. It'll talk about how important gunpowder is. So it led to a lot of death, but also it helped countries out a lot. Number four, the compass. The magnetic compass was first used by used in Feng Shui practices, and then it was invented for navigation during the Song Dynasty. So this invention played a crucial role because if you have a compass, it makes mapping a lot easier. Think about navigation and trying to remember your steps and where you came from, and a compass just makes everything so much more precise for ocean travel and for mapping out countries. So that's the number four invention. Number five, this one is going to be widely used for economic trade and also for practical reasons, but silk. Silk became a highly sought after commodity because it's very comfortable. It's they use it underneath armor. So imagine like medieval times, if you're wearing metal armor on your bare skin or on like an undershirt or like a burlap shirt, silk is gonna feel so much better. So if you think of like Under Armour for like football players under their shoulder pads, that's how the Chinese were using this early silk and it was a very sought after commodity because it's easy to dye silk, so you can change the colors. It has a very elegant appearance, and so one reason that silk is a great invention is because it led to the Silk Road. So Europeans and Middle Eastern countries really sought after this silk from China, and it brought a lot of economic exchange, which brought about the Silk Road, which brought about a whole new geography for the world. Like the trade routes from Asia to Africa to Europe were all established along this path. So number 5, I would say silk is a very valuable invention. Number 6, porcelain. We call it china today, like our fine china, but it was really just a refined form of porcelain known for its durability. It was first developed in the Eastern Han Dynasty from the years 25 CE to 200 CE, and then it was later perfected in the Song Dynasty. It's a valuable export because of its durability, and it's impermeable from water, so water can't pierce through it. It was a great tool for holding valuable oils and water, and it could be transported globally. So if you were going on a ship and you were going to try to bring some spices or some liquids, you'd want your porcelain. So that was a very great invention, and it's still around today. Number 7, the mechanical clock. This is, don't think like watches and like pocket watches. This mechanical clock is huge. It's like a building. So the first mechanical clock invented by I Ching, who was a Buddhist monk and mathematician, he invented this in 725 AD. It was a water-driven mechanism, so there'd be running water along the bottom that would spin part of the clock in even increments. So to have a ticking clock, it has to be exactly even all 60 seconds. But what made this mechanical clock special, it had what's called an armillary sphere, and this armillary sphere was in sync with eclipses and also the solstice in the winter and spring and summer. So they could evenly predict these eclipses and these solstice events, as well as tell daily time. And another cool thing about I Ching's invention, it had drums, and it would hit bells and drums during certain hours of the day, so people would know exactly what time it was in public. So that can bring about a whole other list of outcomes, like knowing when to wake up for work, or knowing when work is over, knowing when to take a break, and being able to meet and set up travel schedules. So yeah, number 7, the mechanical clock, great invention. Number 8, paper money. So this paper money was developed, the history of paper money was started in China during the Tang Dynasty around the year 618. Unfortunately, none of this paper money is still around. The earliest paper money that we still have today is from the 1200s, but it was popularized in the Song Dynasty. And this innovation will replace coins in many parts of the world. And paper money is very useful because if you're traveling, it's going to be hard to carry a lot of silver, especially in your pockets. If you had a horse, maybe you can carry a lot of silver, but for travelers and traders, it's way easier just to carry some paper money. Think about today, if you want to buy a car or a house, you're not going to carry the silver coinage to buy that car or that house. You're just going to write a check from your bank account. And that's what this early paper money leads to. It leads to centralized banking, because for there to be paper money, there has to be a central power that backs the value of that money. So it leads to deficit spending. It leads to a flexibility in trade where you don't have to have all the gold and silver at once. You can just use your paper, and then that paper can be redeemed later for assets that are linked to the paper. So it led even to electronic banking, which we use today. So Shout out to the Tang Dynasty for paper money. It's way easier than carrying around metal. And then number 9 of most important inventions is the seismograph. This was invented by Zhang Heng in 132 AD. This early invention, so for that time period, 132 AD, 1900 years ago, he was able to predict the direction from which earthquakes were coming. And his device is pretty interesting. It has a swinging pendulum in the middle that can go in different directions. And then based on where the earthquake originated from, the dragon mouth would drop a ball into the frog mouth from that direction. So it's not as accurate in terms of like it's a 7.2 magnitude earthquake or whatever the science is today where they use that, but it could at least tell you the direction that the earthquake was coming from, and it could warn people because of how sensitive the pendulum was. It could feel like slight vibrations, and so it could let people know, okay, we have an earthquake coming from the north. We better watch out for like tsunami or different shock waves coming from the north. And it just helped people get prepared, and then it led to future earthquake prediction technologies that were based off of this pendulum movement. So that was a very useful invention. And then number 10, the blast furnace for iron. There were earlier inventions of iron around the world, but one thing that the ancient Chinese did well was they made a blast furnace where you could gather lots of iron in a gigantic kiln, and then you would heat up the furnace and it would melt all the impurities. You can see in the picture here in the bottom right, the slag would get melted off at high temperatures and come out of this tube, and then the pure molten iron would come out on the other side. And that just makes it way easier to mass produce weapons and farm technology such as like hoes and rakes and swords, things like that. So as a country and as a civilization, if you're able to produce mass amounts of iron, it's going to save you a lot of time in your farming and also help you in battle when it comes to swords and armor. So number 10, blast furnace for smelting. So there you guys have it for our competencies. When we talk about what are the major inventions of ancient China, you're going to be required to know at least 3 of these. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope you guys enjoy learning about the ancient Chinese inventions.
Step into the time machine. Let's travel through the past. Mr. Gold's gonna take you on a history blast from ancient